This time when I woke up, the pain had doubled, and I could barely stand. I started screaming when my dad came running over. I tried to tell him to take me to the hospital, but all he kept saying was that it must be a pulled muscle, and I should wait it out. But it didn't feel like a pulled muscle at all. September 1st should have been a day for celebration because my cousin was getting married. But for me, it was the worst. My brother, my father, and I were traveling to the wedding when I started to feel an awful pain in my abdomen. At first, I thought it was back pain from the long drive and that I just needed to stretch. But when I got out of the car, the pain didn't go away. Even when I tried to lay down on the car seat, the pain just kept getting worse. It hurt so badly that I couldn't move at all. As soon as I tried to sit up in the car, a sharp pain shot through my stomach. I couldn't do anything except try to breathe through the pain, but it only made it worse. For the first time, I felt paralyzed. I needed to get to my cousin's wedding, but I couldn't even move. My brother rushed me to the hotel, where I laid on the bed as I cried out in pain. I ended up missing the whole ceremony, and I hated how bad I felt. I didn't want to seem disrespectful, so I tried to drag myself up, but it was useless. I ended up taking painkillers to help numb the pain. After a couple of hours, I felt good enough to join the celebration. I slowly dragged my body off the couch and called my brother to come get me. As I waited for him to come back, I went into the bathroom and wiped my tear-stained face. The painkillers had finally kicked in completely, and I no longer felt anything, so I joined the reception and had dinner with everyone. I tried my best to enjoy the party, which wasn't hard because I loved dancing, so when they turned on the music, I ended up partying the whole night through. Around midnight, it was time to go. I hadn't stopped dancing for about 3 hours straight, but the moment I stood still, the horrible stabbing pain in my abdomen was back. My father had been drinking, so we had to get a ride home from a friend. The whole 45-minute drive, I was suffering horribly and just wanted to fall asleep, but my pain didn't stop. By the time we finally got home, I was too tired to even take my sweaty clothes off, so I flung off my shoes and turned on my fan and went to sleep. But just 30 minutes later, I woke up to something in my throat. It was my dinner, and it was coming up fast. I quickly sat up in my bed as I held my throat and spewed all over my room. I wanted to cry from the pain, but I couldn't do anything except try to keep my vomit down. I really didn't want to worry my dad, so I tried to be quiet while I cleaned up the floor and walls by myself, with vomit all over my top. After I finished cleaning, I put my clothes in the wash, grabbed my PJs, and tried to go back to sleep. This time, when I woke up, the pain had doubled, and I could barely stand. I started screaming when my dad came running over. I tried to tell him to take me to the hospital, but all he kept saying was that it was a pulled muscle and I should wait it out. It didn't feel like a pulled muscle, but my dad wouldn't listen to me, and honestly, I was in too much pain to argue with him. So I tried to just get through it. Then things only got worse. After 5 bedridden hours, my father finally took me to the hospital. I inched myself to the car and laid down in the back. I frequently had to open my eyes and look at the seat to prove to myself I wasn't falling, because it felt like the whole world was being spun around. When we got there, we registered and I sat down. I was hungry, but my father said I shouldn't eat in case they have to operate. I waited for a long time, and the first thing they did was give me an IV bag, so I could still get some fluids in. The doctors asked me all my symptoms. I had all the symptoms of an infection of something in my abdomen: fever, abdominal pain, and vomiting. But there was still a lot of diagnosis possible. Therefore, they did an ultrasound and checked my blood and urine levels. By the end of the night, I felt horrible, switching between boiling lava and Arctic tundra temperatures. Around midnight, they finally diagnosed me with acute appendicitis. What? The doctors explained that this meant the appendix, a small worm-like attachment of your large intestine, is infected. There was nothing I had done to cause this. It can happen to anyone. Just bad luck that something closes the appendix off, and then the bacteria in your intestine start an infection which can spread to your whole belly. Back in the days before modern medicine, people died from this spreading infection. But all I felt was completely lightheaded. I was cold, tired, in pain, and hungry. As soon as I got in the pediatric ward, I passed out immediately. "We will remove your appendix tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. After a night's sleep, painkillers, and fluids, I was feeling slightly better. All I could do was wait. I was only well enough to sleep and watch videos. 6 o'clock came, but no surgery. An accident had happened, and they had to postpone my surgery until noon. I know it seems strange that you have to wait, but it's really better to have a well-rested surgeon taking out your appendix than doing it in a hurry. And because your infection hasn't spread to the rest of your belly, we can wait." I was so hungry by this time, as I hadn't eaten for 4 days straight. It seemed like forever, but finally, noon arrived. The nurses came to wheel my bed away down the floor to the operating room. They left me in the hallway with my parents, where my lead surgeon and the anesthesiologist came to greet me. I was so scared. I had never had an operation before and was unsure of what to expect, but my parents held my hand as the doctor took me through the procedure. After around 15 minutes, he said that it was time. I turned to my parents and told them I loved them. Then the nurses took me to a room with a lot of bright lights and lifted me onto a hard, cold table. The anesthesiologist injected a needle into my arm, and a nurse put an oxygen mask on my face. I started coughing and got extremely drowsy and dizzy. The last thing I remember thinking is, this isn't working. I will stay awake. The world goes black. I wake up to a world of pain. Where am I? Why am I still hurting so much? I open my eyes. There is a digital clock on the wall. 2 hours have passed. Through my pain, I glance around the room. I am in the recovery room. A nurse appears next to my bed. "How are you?" I want to answer her, but I can't even speak. "Horrible," I manage to whisper. "I feel worse than before, literally cut in half." I still had not eaten for days. After all this hungry time, I was finally allowed a popsicle. I was so happy to finally eat, but I soon regretted it, because after about 2 sucks, I vomited all over the ground. We decided I should wait before eating again. Later, they wheeled me away, where I met my parents in the waiting room and gave them a big hug before being wheeled back to my room in the pediatric ward. I was still only allowed to eat clear liquids, so after a couple of minutes, a nurse came into my room with chicken broth, orange juice, and Jell-O. I had never been so excited over chicken broth in my life. After my operation, I still had a lot of pain, and I missed the first week of school. It is weird to think that appendicitis is so common, but fatal if left untreated. I'm happy my operation went well. Some people can have infections of the wound, or the appendix can be so infected it bursts. So I was lucky. After all that, we caught mine in time. Thinking back, I realize I couldn't have gotten through it without my terrific family by my side. I like to think all that struggle made me a much stronger human being in the end.